everybody, welcome to Life is Brutiful, and today we are going to be doing the first iteration of This Week in Beer of 2019. Now, I'm currently in my slowly building brew area, and I've got a new set being built right now. It's just under construction, so it might take a little while for that to start showing up, but I am so excited to be back, and I can't wait to get the full thing, that we get the full effect. Anyways, it's been a while since I've done this, so I think it would be important to kind of reiterate what exactly This Week in Beer is. It is the segment of my channel where we go through and we talk about the biggest, the best, and the most exciting news stories of the past week. Now, because it has been so long since I've done it and a lot hasn't really happened so far this first week of 2019, I am going to cover a couple of stories from mid to late December 2018, just so we can get spun up, because some of that stuff is really, really important and it needs to be discussed. But from here on out, I do plan on doing this on a consistent and concurrent basis. That way we can stay up to date with the beer news. Anyways, I'm so freaking excited to get into this, so let's just jump right into it. First off, this one has got me heated a little bit. So the Brewers Association has once again changed what it means, what the definition of craft beer is. And in my opinion, it is not for the best. Once again, the Brewers Association has increased the limit of maximum annual barrel production. This is the fourth time that they've done it since the Brewers Association's founding. Back in 2007 was the first, and I think it was 2 million barrels annually. They have just increased it up to 6 million barrels. Now, these changes are basically accommodations for Samuel Adams. Samuel Adams had a surprisingly good third quarter at the end of 2018. And we saw massive growth in what is kind of being a stagnated and maybe even declining market nationally. So Sam Adams was able to actually grow a little bit despite all the troubles that they're facing. And with that, they upped their barrel production to the point where the Brewers Association has basically had to change the rules and accommodate them in order to keep them in the fold. Now, the Brewers Association doesn't really want to admit that that's what's happening, but that's what's happening. Here's a statement that they released. This move was not made because of Boston beer, but the timing of evaluating and revising the definition is related to Boston beer. That sounds like a lot of shit to me. It's hard not to notice that every time that the Brewers Association has increased their barrel production limits, it has been directly in correlation with an increase in expansion from either Samuel Adams or Yuengling, which technically falls under the definition of craft beer as decided by the Brewers Association. Now, this expansion of the definition does allow some growth that we've seen in Belgium and Stone and some other of those bigger legacy breweries, and that is a good thing because it does allow them to stay in the fold. However, I do have just a slight irritation with the fact that it keeps happening in relation to Samuel Adams and with Yuengling. I actually like both of these breweries, but it kind of gets to the point where it's like, where are we going to draw the line? You can't just have these breweries growing and growing and growing and growing and still call them craft beer just because we changed the definition of what we think craft beer is to suit them. Eventually it is going to get to the point where we're going to have to cut ties and we're going to have to let them go. A lot of people might not like that because they do come out with some innovative, and I mean, Sam Adams, the Boston Beer Co., they were one of the early adapters and pioneers of this entire industry. But I mean, are we really maintaining our credibility? Are we really maintaining our integrity if we just keep changing it to suit them? Eventually we are going to have to say, yes, y'all are big beer. Now, that particular topic does get me a little bit heated, especially that one particular portion, so I am going to have to dedicate an entire video to this. I'm working on it already, so stay tuned next week because that's coming. But what I think is worse than that is what they have also changed as far as the definition goes. Back in the day, they said that To be a craft brewer, not only do you have to meet a certain size limit, but you also had to utilize traditional or innovative brewing techniques and ingredients. And according to this new 2018 revision, that's no longer the case. Meaning that extracts and flavor additives and color additives and all these other changes and all these other things that we would typically see as a tarnish to a well-made beer are now allowed. Technically, this is not a new issue. We have been seeing this problem for a very, very long time. I mean, there are countless breweries out there under the name craft that utilize like flavor additives and color additives to get their beer to look right. I personally have an issue with that, and I just think it really takes away from the intuitive nature and the skill of being able to coax those flavor out of natural ingredients. And the whole industry, even the consumers, we have turned a blind eye to this issue for a very long time, and it's been kind of swept under the rug. But now, under the new Brewers Association policies, anyone can do it. Every single beer a brewery produces could be just filled with oil and plastic-based flavor additives. I just feel that it really diminishes what the term craft beer was supposed to be. It's like, at this point, what does skill and passion and just craftsmanship even matter? Anyways, I could talk about this subject all day, which is why, like I said, I'm coming out with its own video. But if anyone out there still thinks that the Brewers Association has any credibility, please let me know why you think that, because every year that goes by, I see them making dumber and dumber decisions that is hurting what true craft beer is more than it is helping it. I understand that you gotta keep those, the money flowing in, that way you can continue your mission. But at what point do you, become the enemy? Anyways, moving on to the next segment, we're going to be talking about some beers that have been announced or released this week. I didn't really see anything too headline grabbing, too attention snagging, so I only found one that really piqued my interest, and that is actually a little bit of a shakeup in the Abbey Ales coming out of Belgium. AB InBev owned Lef Brewing out of Belgium. They were an Abbey brewery a long time ago, and then they kind of sold out and did their whole thing, and now they're owned by AB InBev, but are still able to fly the Abbey Ale thing, because it was once in an Abbey, despite the fact that it's now brewed out of Stella, I think. Anyways, they've announced that they are going to be releasing a non-alcoholic version of some of their stronger beers, like the blonde and I think the brown ale. Both of these beers sit well above 5%, so it's real interesting to see that they are going to be coming out with a completely non-alcoholic line, especially since Belgium has one of the highest ABV per capita countries in the entire world. More beers come out of Belgium at a higher percent than almost any other country in the world. I think only America comes close to rivaling them. Through what they are calling a de-alcoholization process, they are actually going to brew their classic and beloved standard beers the way that they normally would. That includes the fermentation that undergoes and gives it its unique, delicious Belgian flavors. However, somehow they're going to be able to extract all the alcohol produced in it. That way you get a well attenuated and a well ester and flavor packed from that Belgian yeast beer without any of the alcohol. It is an interesting move. However, it is not an unexpected one. Throughout the past 5 years or so, I would say the entire beer industry around the world has really started moving in a lower alcohol and even alcohol-free direction. We've seen alcohol-free beers coming out of Omnipollo. We've seen alcohol-free beers coming out of a lot of major German breweries. And even in the States, we've started seeing a huge rise in session IPAs and session stouts, which makes my skin crawl. It's just a pale ale and a porter is what it is. Being the first one to really capture this movement of full-flavored alcohol-free beers, I think is a great decision. This decision actually follows several surveys that have come out of Belgium here recently, where around 60+% of Belgians say that they actually think that they drink too much and they get too drunk too often. So they don't want to cut down their beer consumption, but they do want to cut down the overall drunkenness of it. So this is a genius burgeoning market for them. AB InBev made a bold claim that they think that by 2025, over 20% of the entire world's beer production will be in the low ABV to non-alcoholic category. And I really can't argue with that. If you think about it now, it's already headed in that direction. With the majority of all beer produced in the world being your continental lagers and your light beers and things like that, we're already sitting around that. And then with that new movement, like I was talking about, a huge influx of alcohol-free beers and sessionable ales and lagers, it really does start to seem like the whole industry as a whole is moving towards lighter, easier drinking beers, which could be good for business, because instead of drinking one big double IPA and being blackout drunk, you could go buy 2 6-packs and get the same buzz, you know? So it has the potential to move more product. So I do think that they are onto something here, but I would like to know what you think. Are you a firm believer in whole truth, big, strong, aggressive beers? Or do you really see the ushering in of a new era of low ABV, sessionable, to even non-alcoholic beers? And with that being said, if you are one of those people, how do you feel about these traditional, long-standing recipes being brewed and having all the alcohol taken out of it? Do you think it's going to still give you a great, enjoyable experience, or do you think it's going to be missing some heart and soul there? I'm a little torn on that last bit, so I'd love to know what you think. Anyways, moving away from some weak, soy boy alcohol-free beers, and let's get into some roid-ripping, angry, full-strength beers. Finally, I get to report on this story. I've been waiting on it for almost half a decade, actually. So, Colorado has officially passed legislation that will allow grocery stores, convenience stores, and gas stations to sell full-strength beer. Historically, only liquor stores and specialty beer stores were able to sell full-strength beer, meaning anything over 4.2% ABV and I think 3.2% alcohol by weight. I might have those numbers reversed, I can't remember. But the whole point is, if you went to a grocery store, if you went to a gas station, or anything that wasn't a liquor store or a specialty beer store, you had to get the cheaper, watered-down product. Actually, I don't think it was cheaper. I think it was actually the same price. But starting January 1st, 2019, you will be able to walk into any place that sells beer and be able to buy full strength beer. And this has been a long-standing debate for a long time. Liquor stores in Colorado are predominantly personally owned. You know, they're not big conglomerates and corporations. They're mostly one liquor license given to one person who is able to run that one store. And they were afraid for a long time that if grocery stores and if gas stations were able to sell a similar product, it would take away drastically from their sales, because they lose the inconvenience, really. The customer loses the inconvenience of having to go to 2 places. They can just walk by, pick up their 7% IPA, you know, throw it in the basket with the rest of their groceries. So this has been a debate in the public eye for quite some time. However, in 2016, they decided that they were going to try to modernize Colorado's alcohol laws, which hadn't really been updated all that much since Prohibition era. Now, me personally, I believe that this is a fantastic and great decision for both beer producers and consumers. The more places that a producer has to be able to sell their beer is a more likely chance that it will get into the hands of the consumers who want it. On top of that, it will probably drive up competition in the sales market as a whole. When I lived in Colorado 5 to 6 years ago, everything that was sold in gas stations, everything that was sold in convenience stores and grocery stores were all under Big Beer's umbrella. It was, you know, their umbrella corporations like Coors and Blue Moon and Colorado Native all fell under Big Beer. there was, I don't think, any craft beer at all. Maybe every now and then you would stumble across a session IPA, but I don't really remember seeing any of those there, like easily attainable. But with this new decision, breweries are going to be able to stock those shelves up, and it's going to make big beer have to compete. Their sales are going to go through the roof for everybody, and I really think this is going to be a great decision for craft beer. I think this is going to be the foot in the door that craft beer needs to really see some growth in what, as I mentioned earlier, is kind of a stagnated industry as of the past few years. Otherwise, breweries had no way, it was impenetrable for them to be able to get into these doors and make these sales. But I truly believe that this decision is going to see a lot of expansion in the next few years of a lot of the breweries in Colorado. I'm really excited to see what's going to happen throughout 2019, and I'm going to be following Colorado's beer production and their brewery growth over the next years, because I really believe that this is going to be a nice big boom for them. Now, the last story that I want to talk about is one that hits me close to home, being a government employee and a big beer drinker. As some of you might have noticed, the federal government is going through a partial closure right now, which means the majority of non-essential employees are currently sitting at home twiddling their thumbs and not getting paid. Beer, as you might know, is an extremely heavily regulated industry, and that comes from the state level and the federal level. With all the federal employees not being at work right now, a lot of the things that the beer industry needs to function and thrive, they don't have available. The alcohol and tobacco tax and trade bureau, the TTB, they're down. And breweries need TTB approval for ingredients and new branding, and if they want to create a new label for a new beer, that all has to get approved through them. Especially if they want to produce a new beer, that might get approved by their state government, but they are based off of a distribution network in multiple states, and that's like their business model. They can't send that new beer across state lines because they don't have federal approval. So because of this shutdown and how long it's gone on, breweries have already seen massive stagnation in their production lines. It's so bad that even if the TTB was to open up right now, it would still take weeks for some breweries to get their new labels out and onto shelves, because there's so much backlog and it's already a long, lengthy process to begin with. So all the good news that we've been seeing here and there about potential industry growth, this one is almost like a nail in the coffin, because without that federal approval, breweries can't move, and they got the product sitting in the tanks or maybe even in packaging, and it just can't go anywhere. It's gonna just shelf rot, and it's gonna be garbage, and it's gonna be a lot of money wasted, and it's gonna hurt the bottom line of all this breweries, which, as I've mentioned for 1,000th time, is already in a hurting industry. So I try not to get political on here, because I really don't like people who try to shove their personal view of politics down people's throat, but I'm going to get a little political here. If you want to see some change and you want to see, I don't care which direction or which side you're on, if you just want to see something start happening and you want those fat cats up in Washington to get off their fat asses, I highly encourage you to go to drunkdialcongress.org, which is a website where you're able to drunk dial Congress. You have some anonymity there, and you can just call your representatives and tell them, hey, get off your ass and get back to work. And if that doesn't work, which probably won't, let's be honest, but you should still contact your representatives as best you can. Call your senators, call your governors, call whoever you need to call them, and tell them that we are tired of the federal government not working for us and holding up our beer. So give them a call and make those motherfuckers work for you. That's what they're there for, supposedly. So as I close out this video, I do want to talk about one last thing. There was a picture that surfaced in the beer community. It kind of went viral this week, and it's really interesting. It's the first known picture of people sharing a beer. It was circa 1840 in England, and there's been a little debate about what beer they're drinking, but I don't think that's really the main point. The point is, I think it's extremely cool to see that the passion for beer and a passion for sharing beer has been around for so long. And truly, honestly, that's what makes our industry so fun and so enjoyable to begin with. So I bring up this picture for one reason. I hope throughout 2019 you find a good group of people to share your beer with, because beer always tastes better when it's with a friend. So with that being said, I hope y'all have a fantastic 2019. I really hope you enjoyed the return of This Week in Beer. I know I do. I'm greatly looking forward to seeing what craziness happens this year. So thank you very much for watching, everybody. I hope y'all enjoyed. Let me know what y'all thought about the topics, and if there's any topics I missed, please let me know. Like, comment, subscribe. Cheers.